published a book, wrote a book called Relevance, Making Stuff That Matters. It came out last September. And came up with the idea for this book because in my many conversations with marketing people over the years, I've had quite a few of them now, it's been some years, this word relevance seemed to come up almost more than any other word. Relevance, relevant, relevancy, which I'm not even sure is grammatical, but it kept coming up. And so got to thinking about that, and I thought, you know, it was kind of ironic because I think, as we all know, most of what happens in marketing isn't relevant. And so I thought it would be interesting to kind of dig into that idea. When I sat down to write the book, this was the very first line that I wrote. An epidemic of irrelevance has brought once powerful brands to their knees. And to be honest, when I wrote that line, and it literally was the first line that I wrote, I thought, you know, is that an overstatement? You know, am I exaggerating a little too much here, engaging in hyperbole? You know, if somebody really pressured me on it, you know, to name names and be definitive, I wasn't sure that I could. But I think it's fair to say that it's not an overstatement at all anymore. If anything, it may be a slight understatement. You know, when you've got great brands like Starbucks and Target who are struggling, and when you've got titans of industry like General Motors and Chrysler, who are in bankruptcy or coming out of bankruptcy, it's pretty clear that something has changed, and it hasn't changed for the better. But what hasn't changed, I believe, are some of the basic laws of the universe, which ultimately is what relevance is all about. Relevance, the book, is really just a big, fat reminder of what we think we already know, but that we have a tendency to forget. So I based the book really on 6 principles. They're not rules, really. I started out calling them elements of relevance. I wanted to name the book that. The publisher didn't like the title for some reason. And I came up with these principles not out of my own head, but really from talking to a lot of very smart marketing people that I've interviewed over the years. And I really tried to tell the story of relevance through the voices of those people versus just through my own voice. I backed it up with as many examples as possible that were drawn from my newsletter, which Diane mentioned, Cool News of the Day, which goes out by email every weekday morning. You can also find it online at reveries.com, as well as interviews that I've done in the Hub magazine. Hopefully there's still some copies of the Hub floating around. I sent some in. And in combination with that, I wrote a series of columns for Fast Company. And I kind of took all of this and I remixed it, if you will, kind of through this lens of relevance, and really try to get at what seemed to be some of the basic building blocks of great marketing. So I thought we'd just go through each of these principles or elements one at a time, and we'll start out with innovation. And the point that I want to make about innovation is that it's not some big, scary, mysterious thing. It's really just about solving problems and helping people live happier lives. That's really all it is. In fact, in many ways, I think that innovation and relevance are the same things. My friend Stephen Burkhoff, who is who was the head of innovation at Audi.com, Audi Motors, he's now with Edmunds.com, once told me, this is a direct quote, innovation is all about staying relevant, that's all it is. If you are losing relevance, you need to innovate. If you are perfectly relevant, there is less need to innovate. An example that I'd like to use here is, and it may seem like an unlikely example because of recent troubles, and that's Starbucks, because I think that we tend to forget lately exactly how innovative Starbucks was when it first burst on the scene. At the time, and I remember this, we had Folgers and we had Maxwell House, and they were beating each other up, really killing each other at the shelf in a price war. And then Starbucks came along and completely reinvented the coffee house experience, took what had been a commodity product and turned it into a branded experience, gave people, that third place to go. One of the most remarkable things to me about this is how few others have applied that very basic and very important, very powerful insight as effectively as Starbucks did to build the brand. Of course, the other remarkable thing about Starbucks is how a brand that got so many things right back then seems to be having so much difficulty in getting so many things wrong now. I just read in the paper this morning they're closing some Starbucks and renaming them after sort of local landmarks, and they're going to be serving beer and wine now at Starbucks, or these sort of former Starbucks stores. Anyway, the most important thing, the point that I really want to make about Starbucks is that they built this brand really and truly using retail as the medium in the fullest sense. They didn't use television, they didn't use radio, they didn't use print, the internet, they didn't even use POP, you know, in the sense that we usually think of POP. They really used the store as the medium. So when we think about innovation, I think the thing to think about is that media are not necessarily the message at retail. The experience is really the message. I think I heard that Simon Ewan said something similar yesterday. That is really what made Starbucks relevant then, and I believe can make it relevant once again.